The basic question of does God exist is a critical question that far too few people seriously consider. An equally important question is, if God does exist, what is he or she like, and what does he or she want of me and of human beings in general? Hi, my name is Tim, and in this three-part video series, we're going to explore and answer the important question, does God exist? The vast majority of people on the earth reject the physicalist view. The physicalist view is that nothing but matter and energy exist. Of the approximate 7.7 billion people currently living on the planet, approximately 7.2 billion or 94% have beliefs that either a creator exists or there is a non-physical or spiritual dimension to human life. While that does not prove anything regarding the existence of God, it does point strongly to the fact that as beings given a mind to reason, the natural inductive conclusion our mind reaches is that something must account for my existence other than natural physical processes. And good reasoning and logic, like sound inductive reasoning, are the tools we need to find answers to non-physical realities. What non-physical reality, you might ask? Well, are reason and logic real, for example? Are they physical? If they are real and not physical, not made up of matter or energy, then they must be non-physical. Before we start looking at the reasons why the most reasonable conclusion is that a creator exists, let's address the thing called science. Many people go through the world's educational institutions are taught that science is the discipline which can answer all the important questions and solve all the most pressing problems that human beings face. Is that belief true? Let's start by properly defining science. What is science? Here are two dictionary definitions. Cambridge, the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the natural and physical world, or knowledge obtained about the world by watching it carefully and experimenting. Oxford, the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. Here are some important truths about science. It is a very valuable discipline and pursuit which has brought the human race very valuable knowledge over history. Science often dispels ignorance or error, an extremely helpful function. For example, it used to be believed that the earth was flat or that germs spontaneously occur. Revealing what is true about the physical world is a very valuable and meaningful benefit of practicing science. The use of science has improved human life in many ways, both collectively, like wiping out diseases like polio, or understanding what is required to provide clean water for communities, and individually, medical advancements, causing a higher quality of life for people with illness, injury, or disease. Science is extremely valuable, but it cannot answer some of life's greatest questions, nor can it solve some of humankind's biggest problems. Questions like, who or what am I? And problems like how to reduce war and conflict, or how to implement justice among people, or what is hope or love, and are they more valuable than material things? Those real and meaningful issues are out of the domain of science because they are not an attribute of the physical or natural world. Instead, they are metaphysical in nature and impact beings which have a spiritual component to our nature. You might be wondering what metaphysical means. Here's the definition of metaphysics. Cambridge, the part of philosophy that is about understanding existence and knowledge. Oxford, the branch of philosophy that deals with the first principles of things, including abstract concepts such as being, knowing, identity, time, and space. In short, metaphysics deals with things beyond or greater than meta, the physical realm. The fact that there is more than atoms and molecules will be the subject of our next video. This video will focus on this simple claim, that a designer or creator is necessary to account for complex physical machines made up of interdependent subsystems. That claim regarding a creator being required is the fundamental intuitive induction that is the basis for approximately 94% of the world's human beings believing that a creator exists to account for the marvelous carbon-based creatures of this planet. We rely on the science of probability to get where we are going in this video, so let's talk about and seek to understand this concept of probability. Probability theory is a branch or discipline of mathematics. Simply put, determining the likelihood of an event occurring using mathematical methods is the science of probability theory. For example, probability math is used regularly in attempting to predict the weather. You rely on the weather report saying there is a 90% chance of rain on the day of your wedding reception to cancel the reception on that day. Athletes and coaches use probability to determine the best sports strategies for games and competitions. For example, if a high school football kicker makes 9 out of 15 field goal attempts from over 40 yards during the season, she has a 60% chance of scoring on her next field goal attempt from that distance. The equation is 9 divided by 15 equals 0.6 or 60%. So as you can see, probability math is used and relied upon regularly in real-life decisions to understand the likelihood of events and to make decisions based on the probability of the event occurring. So when I talk about probability, I'm not talking about some hypothetical concept, but rather a branch of mathematics that is well established. It is used regularly in the real world to make important decisions, which decisions people rightly believe are based on sound math and science, not hocus-pocus speculation. Please consider the following example. If you wanted to cross a car, that is a relatively complex, inorganic, not carbon or biologically based machine, would you conclude it has no maker or creator but rather just came into existence through natural forces? That would be an irrational conclusion to the evidence in front of your eyes. The mind we have been given as human beings intuitively knows through induction, that is, without formally evaluating data, that complex machines, whether the inorganic machines created by people, like cars, or inorganic machines like the human body, require a designer. Let's use a bicycle, a relatively simple inorganic machine, to illustrate the fact that a machine with interdependent subsystems, that is, the parts of the whole subsystems need each other to accomplish the function of the whole machine, requires a designer according to the mathematics of probability, a tool science uses extensively. Let's start by making a common sense observation. Every machine has an ability, function, or purpose. A bicycle, as an example of an inorganic machine, has the ability, function, and purpose of transporting a human being across land. The human body, as an example of an organic machine, has multiple abilities to create, perform, communicate, and self-replicate, to name but a few. The viewer should consider the possibility that a human being, in addition to the body having many interesting abilities and functions, also has a higher purpose greater than the mere physical abilities and functions of the body. So, moving on with the bicycle analogy, a bicycle has several subsystems that make up the whole machine and thus contribute to its being able to fulfill its ability, function, and purpose of transporting a person across land. These subsystems include the load-bearing system or frame to bear the weight of the rider, the steering system to enable the rider to direct the machine, the motion enabling system or wheels which enable the frame to glide across the surface, the brake system which enables the rider to slow or stop the bicycle, and the pedals, chain, and gears, the drive system that converts the biological energy of the organic engine, the rider, to the frame and wheels to enable the bicycle to move across land. Some of these subsystems are made up of smaller subsystems like the bearings for the wheels or the derailleur for changing gears. Here's the key to understand. Each of those subsystems must know how to orient and integrate with each other in order for the whole machine to realize its abilities, function, and purpose. In other words, if it were possible for each subsystem to create itself, which is both unreasonable and highly unlikely, Each subsystem would need to orient and integrate itself with all the other relevant subsystems to accomplish the function and purpose of the whole machine. Please pause the video and think about that for a minute. Here is where probability comes in. With no designer to orient and integrate the subsystems, the likelihood or probability of those subsystems coming together to accomplish the function and purpose of the whole machine is essentially zero. In other words, it's just not going to happen. Here is an example to help you understand. If you have ever been to a carnival or fair or amusement park, think about that game where you have a bunch of glass bottles all lined up in a large square. There are some target bottles that are a different color or height. There usually is one bottle in the middle that is the grand prize bottle. You are given plastic rings and the game is to throw the plastic ring and have it land on the target bottles. Let's say there are 500 bottles and only one painted red in the center. What are your chances of throwing a ring onto that one red bottle? Well, if the rings did not bounce off the glass bottles, the probability might be about 1 in 500 if you are a really accurate thrower. That would mean you would have to throw a ring about 500 times before you would land one on the red bottle. However, the rings do bounce very easily and you need a perfect throw for the ring to land and stay on the bottle. And let's say you can only make a perfect throw 1 out of 10 times. This means the probability of your landing a ring on the red bottle is 10 times 500 or 5,000, meaning only one throw in 5,000 on average will land on the red bottle. Okay, now let's say you need to land on the red bottle twice in a row to win the big prize. The probability is now 5,000 times 5,000 or 25,000, which means it will take you about 25,000 attempts before you will land 2 rings consecutively on the red bottle. How about 3 in a row? That is now 25,000 times 25,000 or 625 million to 1. How about 4 times in a row? Or 390 quadrillion, 625 trillion tries before you might get 4 in a row on the red bottle. As you can see, the numbers increase very quickly in a manner called exponential distribution or growth. Can we agree, dear viewer, that it is really unlikely that someone is going to throw a ring on the red bottle 4 times in a row? Stated another way, the possibility of it happening is essentially zero. A common response to a really low probability event occurring is to say, oh, but it is possible. The proper response is yes, it is possible, just as possible as throwing a ring on the red bottle 4 times in a row. Hope in regard to low probability events like winning the lottery is a poor substitute for accepting realities properly predicted using mathematics. Let us move forward. How about getting the ring on the red bottle 1,000 times in a row, let alone just 4? In other words, what is the probability that a person will be able to throw a plastic ring on the red bottle 1,000 times in a row? How likely do you think that is? That probability of throwing a ring onto the red bottle 1,000 times in a row, dear viewer, is as likely as the existing subsystems of a relatively simple machine like a motorcycle being able to, with only random natural forces as the active agent, orient and integrate themselves together to form the motorcycle. Please note I said existing subsystems. That 1,000 times in a row probability does not take into account the individual subsystems creating themselves in the first place. In that scenario, the probability goes down to throwing the ring on the red bottle tens or hundreds of thousands of times in a row. What about far more complex machines like the space shuttle, or perhaps the most complicated organic machine known to humankind, the human body? The human body has many dozens of subsystems that make up the whole body, and each of those subsystems is complex in and of itself. Take the function of seeing, for example. Obviously, the main organ that works with the eyes is the brain, specifically the visual cortex, that interprets what it is the eye is seeing. However, there are a number of organ systems that also work with the eye. The muscular system is connected to the eye since it's muscle tissue that allows the eye to turn and rotate in its socket. The nervous system is also linked to the eye in that the optic nerve transmits the impression from the eye to the brain. The eyes are also linked to the vascular system, which must be supplied with blood and nutrients to function. All of those subsystems or contributing systems need to have been oriented and integrated with the primary component of the system, the eye. Other subsystems that make up the human body and its abilities, functions, and purposes include the respiratory, the immune, the circulatory, the nervous, the digestive, the endocrine, the integumentary, the muscular, the excretory, the reproductive, and the skeletal. All of those subsystems and their subsystems need to be oriented and integrated with each other to form the human body and allow for its abilities, functions, and purposes. And we have not even listed the genetic aspects of the human body. The genetic system is a complex language which directs and controls the formation of the human body. Biological genetics is not significantly different than a really advanced software language with rules and syntax. Now, you are free to believe that random natural forces cause the human body to exist, and you are free to believe that the genetic language just happened. But to do so is irrational and certainly not based on reason, science, or the scientific method. It is no more scientific than to claim that the space shuttle, a relatively non-complex inorganic machine compared to the organic machine of the human body, formed itself from natural random forces. Remember the ring toss probabilities? So, we have established that the likelihood that a designer exists to account for the complex organic machines that exist on the Earth is virtually certain. Stated the other way, the probability of complex organic machines with interdependent subsystems existing from mere random chance and natural forces is virtually zero. This is especially true when established natural laws and forces, like the second law of thermodynamics, which states that entropy is a measure of disorder and all systems gain entropy over time, work against the ordering of matter into more complex systems. To reject a designer as the cause behind the amazing organic machines on this planet and instead embrace naturalistic evolution is to reject reason and science and instead embrace a mathematically impossible and thus irrational belief. In the next video, we will use a computer as an analogy to press the truth that the physicalist view, that is, the belief that all things are made of either matter or energy, is thoroughly inadequate to account for our human experience and abilities. Until then, may you ask, seek, and knock. Question important things like why you are living the life you are given and what you are truly living for. And may you be inspired to hear His voice, forsake all the world considers valuable, find His freedom and love, and come, join the peaceful revolution.